How you doing, everyone? Welcome back. Well, you've probably heard the news that after 234 years, at the age of 234 years old, the Constitution, well, specifically the First Amendment is dead. Um, it was pretty brutal murder, too. Um, it took some time. It was a brutal murder that actually happened over time, but it's dead. It is dead, right? You might maybe still have freedom of religion in this country, but you don't have freedom of speech. We no longer have freedom of the press. We don't really have the right to peaceably assemble anymore. That doesn't mean that it's not going to happen. We don't really have that right anymore, though. We have a privilege if they allow it to. If they decide not to come gun us down. Petition your government for redress of grievances? Yeah, right. Right. Yeah. First Amendment's done. It's done. Jimmy Kimmel, as you know, his show was canceled. And the reason it was canceled is because he didn't even say anything about Charlie Kirk. He said something about Charlie Kirk's shooter, right? The killer of Charlie Kirk. He said that it looked like the guy was MAGA, right? Or something to that effect. I don't have the exact quote. I don't care. He was referring to Charlie Kirk's killer and how it looked like he was right-wing, which, hate to tell you, Jimmy, but you got that one wrong. He was actually, the more we look at it, the more it looks like he was on the left. But there's so much conflicting information out there that we still don't know for sure. We still don't know for sure. So, he gets canceled for that. Ironically enough, the right wing, they hate cancel culture, don't they? So they say. Who invented cancel culture? Who invented it? As far as I can tell, it was invented by Joseph McCarthy, a conservative Republican in the 1950s, United States Senator. You've heard of McCarthyism. He's the reason that phrase exists. He wanted to out anyone and everyone that he didn't like as a communist. Oh, what? This actor has an opinion that I don't like? Communist. Blacklist him. Oh, yeah. Everyone is a communist to McCarthy. Almost sounds like, who's that guy that's out there now? What's his name? Donald Trump. Yeah, that guy. Everyone is a communist, Marxist, leftist, radical, fascist, whatever. Never mind the fact that you can't be a communist and a fascist. You can't be a fascist and a Marxist. It's just not possible. Totally polar opposite ideologies. But, yeah. Joseph McCarthy started cancel culture. And then, later on in the 50s, Elvis Presley with the swinging hips and all that, and actually even before that, right? Just even before Elvis Presley, when rock and roll was first becoming a thing, right? Rock and roll, that was the devil's music. Forget about the subsequent satanic panics that would come in later decades. It was the devil's music right from the start, because you've got these black musicians out there that are getting these white kids all excited with this new fun music that they're coming up with. Which of course led to, I believe the term of the time was the mongrelization of the races. Yeah. So we got to put a stop to this rock and roll because, our white kids are gonna become corrupt by these black musicians. And then of course Elvis, being a white kid playing this black music and, swinging his hips while he's doing it. Oh boy, gotta cancel him. A few years later, in the 1960s, the Beatles are the biggest thing in the world. And John Lennon says what I would agree it was kind of a stupid thing for him to say, or at least for him to have actually said it was kind of dumb. But I'm not going to say that he was factually wrong. I just think it's something that he shouldn't have said, right? That, the Beatles were more well-known than Jesus, or more popular than Jesus, or something like that, which, factually, yeah, it was true. It was true. More people knew the Beatles than knew Jesus. Lennon later clarified what he meant by that. He wasn't saying, hey, we're better than Jesus. Which didn't stop the backlash, really. People were out there burning their records, whatever. And then of course, you got your television censors out there that this whole time that you got your television censors out there, and they got upset with some things that had happened on, for example, the Doors were on the Ed Sullivan Show, and when they sang their song "Light My Fire," they did not censor themselves, because the line couldn't get much higher. It was assumed to be a drug reference, so well, don't sing that. And Jim Morrison's like, yeah, right. Johnny Cash did something similar with his song "Sunday Morning Coming Down," which is actually a Chris Christopherson song, but Johnny Cash did his version of it on some program. There's a line in there, "Wishing, Lord, that I was stoned," which, he didn't censor himself on that. He sang it as it was written. So there was some backlash against Johnny Cash. Fast forward to the 1980s. I remember this. I was a kid when this happened. The Satanic Panic of the 1980s. The Filthy 15. For those of you who are old enough to remember the Filthy 15. I don't have the entire list in front of me. In fact, I don't have most of the list in front of me. But there were 15 songs that were deemed the Filthy 15. And the Parents Music Resource, whatever, Resource Center, or the PMRC. You know, if you're old enough to remember them, you know who they are. You know, Tipper Gore and her organization, right? More cancel culture. And not that I would put Tipper Gore on the right, but that actually had bipartisan support from both the right and what was then kind of the left, but would then again, the right wing back then would be considered radical left today. So, and there wasn't a whole lot of difference between the two, really, or it didn't look like it anyway. Yeah, Def Leppard, their song Saturday Night High and Dry, or Cyndi Lauper and her song She Bop, Twisted Sister with We're Not Gonna Take It. You know, that's just part of the Filthy 15. Prince was on there, Prince and Wasp, you know, and so many different reasons that the songs would be on there, right? They could be, you know, sex, you know, like She Bop, which was about masturbation, or, you know, the Def Leppard song I mentioned, they said was about drugs and alcohol. Well, maybe a little bit, but it was whatever. I mean, they read into things that they wanted to read into. We're Not Going to Take It. It was supposed to have violent content, which they got that from the music video. And if you've never seen that video, you need to see it. It's funny. I mean, it's very cartoonishly violent, but it's very cartoonish. It's meant to be ridiculous and over the top. You know, and it was based off of cartoon violence. But by the way, if you can hear that, Eva is down here playing with something. You know, so if you hear that little clicking noise or whatever it is that she's doing down there, I don't know. Where was I? Oh yeah, cancel culture. They couldn't censor the artists, so they put the parental warnings on there. So, you know, like, for those of you who still know what CDs are, and you see that little warning tag in the bottom corner, yeah, PMRC is responsible for that. And cancel culture. Where else did we go in the cancel culture here? Well, let's take the entirety of the post 9/11 era. We had people in this country trying to cancel Islam, trying to cancel an entire religion. And I tell you what, I have my disagreements with Islam, but you have the right to practice your faith, and I'm not going to interfere with that. Just because you and I don't agree as it pertains to faith, okay, that's fine. You do your thing, I'll do my thing. We'll get along just fine, right? As long as neither one of us go, you know, because any religion taken to an extreme can be used for violence. And it's when it's taken to the extreme, it's by people who pervert the book that they're reading, right? So, like the radical Muslims who use their faith to justify terrorism, they are perverting the Quran, just like those who are using the Bible to justify violence and hatred and and bigotry are, well, they do it in the name of Christianity, but they are perverting the Bible. In fact, you've probably heard of the Christian nationalists referred to as the American Taliban. And I would say that, or basically say they're the same thing as the Taliban. Well, no, they're not the same thing as the Taliban. They read different books. That's the only difference. The only difference is the book that they read. Serious. Or probably don't even read it, but they use it as a justification for their bigotry, their hatred, and their violence. So, if you're going to be a Christian, good. You know what? I'm a Christian myself. And if you're going to call yourself a Christian, act like one. Read the book and do the things that Jesus calls us to do. And we're all going to fall short. But do the best you can, and don't live in hatred and bigotry, and don't deliberately cherry pick the parts that you like and ignore the parts that you don't like. I'm pretty sure if you're going to call yourself a Christian, that would mean that, by definition, it's a follower of Christ. That would be Jesus. That would mean you'd want to follow the words in red, because that's what he said. Those are his words. Anyway, I didn't mean to get off on a religious sidetrack. I wouldn't really call myself religious anyway. I don't go to church. I just do my best to try to follow the Bible, and I don't want to get caught up with in that Christian nationalist movement, right? This was about cancel culture and killing the First Amendment. So, from Joe McCarthy to, Elvis Presley to the Beatles to, in the later 60s when, the television censors were having a field day trying to, they were having a hard time keeping up. And then finally, some of the television in the 70s just decided, you know what, we're just going to break so many rules that you're not going to be able to enforce them. All in the Family being the big one. Which, by the way, right-wingers, those of you who like to say, well, we grew up with Archie Bunker. Yeah, Archie wasn't the good guy on that show. He wasn't the good guy. He was being made fun of. That was his whole purpose on the show. He was the butt of all the jokes. So, yeah, that show breaks all the rules. And Yet maybe a little bit of a restoration, try to swing away from cancel culture a little bit. But then in the 80s, it comes roaring back with the Satanic Panic and the PMRC. And then in the 90s, it kind of faded out for a bit. And then, of course, after 9/11, now it's all Muslims are bad, because 9/11 happened. So we have to cancel that religion. And now we have to cancel anybody that Cittadini doesn't like. They've all got to be canceled, right? And I knew this way back in 2016 when he said we have to open up our libel laws. We have to make it easier. Make it easier to sue people for saying things that he didn't like, basically, is what he was getting at. And I tell you what, like I said, Jimmy Kimmel, I'm not even sad that he's not on anymore, because I didn't watch him to begin with. It wasn't for me. But it's not whether or not I watched it and whether or not I liked it. Right? That's not the point. And the point isn't whether or not you watched Jimmy Kimmel or whether you like it. The point is, who's next? Where does it stop? I didn't like Jimmy Kimmel. What did I do? I didn't watch. It's not that hard. Right? That's why we have choices and we have freedom of speech. So, Jimmy Kimmel can tell his jokes and I can find them not funny, so I'm going to listen to something else. We cannot allow this to continue. We have to stand up. We have to take a stand. And it may not be easy because the First Amendment, like I said, it's dead. So, they can come after you for just holding up your little sign. Right? But we need to organize. We need to fight back. And again, I'm not saying in a violent manner. We need to do so by taking to the streets, by protesting, and keeping the pressure on, because this is authoritarianism. This is fascism. Yes, I'm saying it. It's fascism. I know Donald Trump likes to say, Donald Trump and other right-wing politicians like to say, well, you can't call us fascists, and you keep calling us fascists, and that's what caused Charlie Kirk to get killed. You know what? Let's apply that same logic then, shall we? Shall we? Let's apply that same logic. Because the vast majority of political violence comes from the right, and they want to completely ignore that. Meanwhile, they are out there calling their opponents communists, radical leftist, Marxist, fascists, socialists. First of all, socialists, that's not necessarily a bad thing. But, when you just throw all the buzzwords out there, and when I say this is fascist administration, I am looking at actual fascist regimes of the past, Mussolini and Hitler, and comparing them to what we have right now. Same playbook. They are doing the same thing now that Adolf Hitler did in the 1930s. It's the same thing happening right now. Don't take my word for it. Pick up a history book. Yeah. First Amendment is dead. So, I don't know if there's any hope left, but I'm not going anywhere. I am not going anywhere. I'm still staying in the fight. You know, so when I say I don't know if there's any hope anymore, that's frustration. And it's hard to believe that there is hope. But if we give up, then there's definitely no hope. We have to keep fighting. I'll see you next time.